I think there's also, as a parent in elementary school, for us, there's also a secondary issue about privacy, because many of us, when a child is exposed to lice in their grade or in their class, we get notes sent home, or you get an email from the schools saying, just so you're aware, the children have been exposed and you should check them.
I'm curious, as a mother, your kids are in elementary school. What are your thoughts?
I think that Nurse Deborah pointed out that probably by the time this child, if it's 10 o'clock in the morning and they discover lice or nits in their scalp, they've been there before. And so I do understand, and I'm very sympathetic, especially with the American Academy of Pediatrics has made this stance, that the kid can stay out the day at school. You don't want to encourage absenteeism, and you don't want them to miss that exposure. So I'm not upset if the kid stays out the rest of that day, and then you are given notification, and you can take care of them at home, whether you choose to use a comb or you choose to use pesticides. I would absolutely want to treat my kid. But I think I understand, and I think it's reasonable, the AAP stance that you don't have to exile the kid the moment you discover it and keep them out. And then I think in terms of the data, to your point, I actually think you should send them back nit-free, because I do think that the eggs can hatch and that you don't know when that's going to happen.
In medicine, we have something called HIPAA, where your healthcare information is yours and yours alone. It's private. And in this case, as you mentioned, a kid who has lice at school often does get singled out under the current guidelines. And I know that the two of you have very different opinions on, is it a HIPAA violation to even single out a child with lice?
When you talk about the Centers for Disease Control saying that it's okay for the children to go to school, they're saying that it's not a health issue, believe it or not. They're saying that it's not communicable, believe it or not. So on that level, I don't know where HIPAA applies. Is it a health issue or isn't it? But if it is a health issue, I believe strongly, and I think everyone would agree, that schools know how to be discreet. They know how to be sensitive to the children. It doesn't mean that people are going to be exposed one way or another because they are infested. And everybody has to work together in the spirit of doing what's in the best interest of protecting the kids. This is a public health issue that requires a public health approach, and thank you to the dermatologists for talking about them coming back to school without the problem. It's just critical, and it's a wonderful standard to set for the children.
Two things I need to say. One, there's a difference between a hatch nit and a not hatch nit. And the second thing is about the privacy situation. It definitely is a privacy and confidentiality issue. Every child, children go back to classroom and say, I have nits, I have lice. There is no way to control that. And if you send home a letter from school, it only takes one or two questions for the parent to figure out what child was sent home, what child got their stuff and didn't come back. It's extremely easy to violate those, even with all the care that we take as nurses to try and protect our children's confidentiality.
It's a bad situation, but let me just say, in my experience anyway, from a different perspective than yours, the children are very much okay with this. They appreciate the help, and they expect the adults in their lives to do what's right by them. It's the adults that create the controversy.
And we are out of time, but I applaud the two of you, because believe it or not, you've both raised really important conversation topics, and I do believe both of your hearts are in the same place, even if your methods are slightly different. And look, we've talked often on the show that lice, they're here to stay. And some of them are becoming more and more difficult to treat. I love your perspective of you're on your kids, because as a dermatologist, you're always making sure you're checking. And I think that's important, parents as well, to make sure they're checking their kids. Interestingly, though, as part of this conversation, we decided to ask our social media followers if they would be okay letting their kids be in the same classroom as someone who has lice. More than 12,000 people voted. 6% said yes, 94% said no. But again, I want to thank both of you for joining us, and we appreciate your input. I don't think there are any easy answers here. If there is one blessing in this, we're not talking about something like influenza, which kills 30,000 plus people a year. And yes, you can get super infections back, but the good news is we're not having headlines, 4 more children die of lice. You know, so this is a nuisance, a big time nuisance, but it's not life and death.